refrigerated chicken man.
That fool's gotta be swimming in sweat. At least no one can see who he is. Ooh, that's embarrassing.
1996 was a fascinating time for animation. Networks were competing hard for Saturday morning slots. Studios were throwing big ideas at the wall, and kids had more cartoon options than ever before. But more options also meant more casualties.
Well, let me tell you something about you and yourself. You're so ugly, your mama's gotta pin a pork chop to your shirt just so the dog will play with you.
Today we're talking about 10 cartoon shows from 1996. Shows that had big budgets, big names, and big ideas, and still couldn't survive past one season. Some were killed by ratings, some by budget cuts, some by network politics, and some probably deserved exactly the fate they got. These are the forgotten cartoons of 1996, shows that came, aired, and quietly disappeared. Let's count them down. Number 10, Waynehead Network, Kids WB episodes, 13, premiered October 19th, 1996.
Which is why I guess your no-account, low-life daddy spent so much time in jail so he won't have to look at your ugly face and our big old butt.
Kicking off our list at number 10 is Waynehead, one of the most personal and unconventional animated series to ever air on Kids WB. Created by comedian and actor Damon Wayans, the show centered around a young boy named Damie Wayne, growing up in poverty in the Chelsea neighborhood of Manhattan. What made the show immediately stand out was its honesty. Damie had a club foot, a condition drawn directly from Damon Wayans' own real-life childhood experiences.
Mama?
Damie, good, you're dressed. Today's your semi-annual appointment with Dr. Hindi.
This was not a superhero show. There were no explosions, no gadgets, no fantasy worlds. Instead, Waynehead leaned into something much harder to pull off in animation: imagination and resilience as tools for surviving a difficult childhood. Damie used his daydreams as an escape from the hardships of real life. And that emotional core made the show genuinely different from everything else airing at the time. The voice cast brought serious talent to the project: Orlando Jones, Marlon Wayans, Sean Wayans, Kim Wayans, Gary Coleman, and John Witherspoon. That is not a small list. The show premiered on October 19, 1996, and ran for just 13 episodes before being canceled. According to Damon Wayans himself, Warner Brothers told him the show was not black enough and not funny enough to justify keeping it on the schedule. The network later claimed it simply suffered from low ratings. Either way, Waynehead disappeared quietly and unfairly. For viewers who did catch it, this show is remembered as one of the most heartfelt and ahead-of-its-time cartoons of the entire decade. Number 9, C Bear and Jamal Network. Fox Kids episodes, 13. Premiered February 3rd, 1996.
Can't blame a bear for trying. I've told you again and again, I can't take you. You need ID to get into the nightclub. It's not like the Boy Scouts.
But I've got an ID.
At number 9, we have C Bear and Jamal, a musical comedy animated series that premiered on Fox Kids on February 3rd, 1996. The show centered on Jamal, a cheerful 9-year-old African-American boy, and his companion C Bear, a magical orange hip-hop teddy bear who rapped. C Bear was voiced by Tone Loc, the rapper famous from the late 80s. The bear came to life whenever Jamal was around, offered him advice, and could take him on magical adventures with a snap of his fingers. He also occasionally broke the fourth wall with sarcastic remarks directly to the audience. The show was co-produced by Film Roman, a respected animation studio. The supporting cast included names like Margaret Cho and Paul Rodriguez. But by 1996, hip-hop-themed cartoons were already starting to feel outdated. Younger audiences weren't connecting with the format. The show ran for 13 episodes and was gone, a series with genuinely good intentions, just delivered at the wrong moment. Number 8, Bureau of Alien Detectors, BAD. Network, UPN Kids, episodes 13. Premiered September 8, 1996.
We can't stabilize the extraterrestrial biological entity's temperature. Earth's just too warm for her.
Bob, the alien intercept craft's coming in less than 12 hours.
At number 8, we have Bureau of Alien Detectors, commonly known as BAD. It premiered on UPN on September 8, 1996, and was marketed with a pitch that sounded like a guaranteed hit. X-Files meets the A-Team. The 90s sci-fi craze was at its absolute peak. Saban Entertainment produced the show, and the premise was solid. The story followed the Phalanx Squad, a special team assembled to protect humanity from alien threats. The team was led by war veteran Ben Packer, alongside psychic Casey Taylor, biologist Shane Sanderson, computer expert Colin Marcus, and Moose, a former soldier who gained superhuman strength and morphing abilities after an alien encounter. The villain, Eterno, was genuinely creative, an ancient warrior king who had been turned into pure salt over centuries and was now trying to convert the world's oceans into salt. The concept had real potential, but the execution never matched the premise. Ratings stayed low throughout the run, and after just 13 episodes, UPN pulled the plug. BAD, a show that wasn't nearly as bad as it was forgotten. Number 7. The Mouse and the Monster Network, UPN episodes 13. Premiered September 21st, 1996.
Howdy, little mouse cat. Show me a pointed head, and I'll show you a sharp wit.
No, Mommy, don't make me play with the walrus boy.
Coming in at number 7 is The Mouse and the Monster, a quirky animated series that premiered on UPN on September 21st, 1996, produced by Saban Entertainment. The setup was genuinely creative. During what would be his final concert, a brilliant pianist named Flat Noteski suffered a heart attack and died on stage. A mad scientist, Dr. Wackerstein, immediately claimed Flat Noteski's brain and transplanted it into a new body, a cycloptic golem that looked like Frankenstein's monster. That creature became Mo, a massive, immature, destructive monster who secretly carried the brain of a musical genius inside. His partner was Chesbro, a small, intellectual mouse. Two completely opposite personalities stuck together, stumbling through misadventure after misadventure. The concept had real charm, but audiences largely ignored it. The show ran for 13 episodes and quietly disappeared. Reruns later surfaced on Fox Family Channel and various European Disney channels, but the original run left almost no footprint behind. Number 6, Project G.e.e.K.e.R. Network, CBS episodes, 13 premiered September 14th, 1996.
We'll lose them, as long as nothing goes terribly wrong.
Yeah, what could go wrong, Becky?
At number 6, we have Project G.e.e.K.e.R., a show that premiered on CBS on September 14th, 1996. It was created by Douglas Tenapel, the same man behind Earthworm Jim, and developed by Doug Langdale. The main character was G.e.e.K.e.R., Genokinetic Research, an artificial shape-shifting being with absolutely no control over his own abilities. He could transform into virtually anything, but he couldn't manage it, couldn't predict it, and couldn't stop it. The result was chaotic plots and bizarre, unhinged writing that never found a consistent tone. The show also ran into a very specific institutional problem. The FCC rejected CBS's attempt to classify Project G.e.e.K.e.R. as educational and informational programming, a classification that had become important under newly strengthened 1996 regulations for children's television. And then CBS pulled the plug on its entire Saturday morning cartoon block in 1997, as the network's ratings had been spiraling downward for years. Project G.e.e.K.e.R. went down with that sinking ship. 13 episodes, then nothing. Number 5, Captain Simian and the Space Monkeys. Network, syndication, Amazing Adventures. Episodes 26 premiered August 16th, 1996.
I was demonstrating the new peel-off maneuver, Jungle Blue Monkey 12.
At number 5, we have Captain Simian and the Space Monkeys, a show that actually ran longer than most on this list, with 26 episodes, but still couldn't survive past a single season. The series premiered in the UK on August 16, 1996, and in the US on September 7, 1996, airing on the Amazing Adventures syndicated block from Hallmark Entertainment. The premise was inspired. During the real monkey-manned spaceflight experiments of the 1960s, one rocket veered off course, sending a chimpanzee named Charles deep into outer space. Years later, his craft was discovered by the most intelligent civilization in the universe. They gave him enhanced intelligence, advanced weapons, and cutting-edge technology, and tasked him with protecting the universe from the evil Lord Nebula. Nebula himself was one of the more unusual cartoon villains ever created. A half-human, half-black whole entity whose goal was to become a complete black hole and trigger a big crunch, swallowing the entire universe. The voice cast included Michael Dorn, Malcolm McDowell, and James Avery. The writing was sharp, the concept was original, and the humor landed. But syndication was a difficult space to survive in, with limited visibility and inconsistent scheduling. The show ended after one season. It's currently available on Tubi, which is at least something. Number 4, Road Rovers Network, Kids WB episodes. 13 premiered September 7th, 1996.
What are you working on, Hunter?
A missing dog case. You know, just trying to update the files.
I'm an expert on missing dogs. Let me see.
Hey.
At number 4, we have Road Rovers, a cartoon that sounds like it should be a parody, but was played with complete sincerity from start to finish. The series premiered on Kids WB on September 7th, 1996, created by Tom Ruegger and produced by Warner Brothers Television Animation. The show followed a team of 5 crime-fighting dogs who had been transformed into Caano-sapiens, highly intelligent, essentially human-like animals created through advanced genetic science. Each dog lived as the pet of a different world leader. Hunter belonged to the President of the United States living in the White House. Colleen lived with the British Prime Minister, Blitz with the German Chancellor, Exile with the Russian President, and Shag with the Swiss President. When a global threat emerged, they were assembled as the Road Rovers to defend the planet. The team's primary villain was a former cat who had been accidentally transformed into a sapient being through a botched experiment. Unlike the Rovers, he appeared almost entirely human, with only faint cat-like ears hinting at his true nature, typically hidden beneath a helmet for maximum dramatic effect. His mission was to destroy the scientist responsible for his transformation and then conquer the world, because that is simply what cartoon villains do. The show ran for just 13 episodes before disappearing from the schedule. But Road Rovers quietly developed a small, loyal cult following over the years, made up almost entirely of people who watched it as kids and spent years trying to convince others that, yes, it was a real show. Cartoon Network aired reruns through 1998, but the original run was already over. Number 3, Quack Pack Network. Disney Afternoon, syndication episodes 39. Premiered September 3rd, 1996.
I'm sorry, boys. This is the only time I could get off of work for a date.
We understand. Oh.
At number 3, we have Quack Pack, a DuckTales spin-off that took the Disney Afternoon formula and tried to drag it into the mid-90s. The show debuted on September 3rd, 1996 as part of the Disney Afternoon programming block, following the success of Goof Troop. The premise was a significant departure from what came before. Donald Duck was now a cameraman for a TV news show, working alongside his girlfriend Daisy Duck, who served as the on-screen reporter. And his nephews, Huey, Dewey, and Louie, were no longer the identical, interchangeable trio from DuckTales. They had grown into rebellious teenagers with distinct personalities. Huey was the leader of the group, the one most likely to believe that fate and coincidence were somehow connected. Dewey was the practical joker, with a deep knowledge of technology. Louie was the youngest, a comic book fanatic, a sports lover, and the kindest of the three. The show leaned hard into its mid-90s moment, attitude, slang, rock music, and an aesthetic that has since become a perfect time capsule of the era. It ran for 39 episodes, making it one of the longer runs on this list, but it never came close to matching the legacy of DuckTales. Fans felt that modernizing these classic characters was a mistake. The show was more sitcom than adventure, more attitude than heart, and for a Disney Afternoon show trying to follow the success of DuckTales and Tailspin, that was a problem. For those who grew up with it, Quack Pack remains a fascinating and very specific artifact of 90s Disney animation. Number 2, Bruno the Kid Network, syndication BKN episodes 36, premiered September 23rd, 1996.
We don't have to remind you, man. The security of the world depends on it.
I understand, sir. It'll never leave my side.
Do you want something?
At number 2, we have Bruno the Kid, a show that answered a question nobody had thought to ask, and turned out to be surprisingly entertaining once someone actually tried it. The question was simple. What if the world's greatest secret agent was an 11-year-old? The series premiered in syndication on September 23, 1996, as part of the BKN programming block. It was co-created and developed by Bruce Willis himself. Yes, that Bruce Willis. And he also voiced the main character. Bruno was an ordinary kid living an ordinary school life. Secretly, he was the top operative for Globe, a global espionage organization that had absolutely no idea its best agent was a child. Bruno maintained his cover by communicating through a computer-generated avatar. A full-grown man who looked exactly like Bruce Willis. The organization interacted with that avatar. Bruno did the actual work. Every episode revolved around Bruno balancing his double life, saving the world during the day, finishing his homework at night, and desperately keeping his entire spy career hidden from his parents, teachers, and classmates. It was essentially James Bond crossed with an after-school special. The voice cast was extraordinary. Bruce Willis, Tim Curry, Mark Hamill, and Jennifer Hale. That lineup belongs at a film festival, not a Saturday morning cartoon slot. The show ran for 36 episodes, one of the longer runs on this entire list, but it didn't return for a second season, primarily because of its unusually high production costs. The only merchandise ever produced was a small selection of kids' meal toys from Wendy's. Even the world's greatest boy spy couldn't escape budget cuts. Number 1. The Incredible Hulk, 1996. Network UPN episodes, 21. Premiered September 8, 1996. And at number 1, we have The Incredible Hulk, a Marvel animated series that, on paper, had absolutely no reason to fail. The show premiered on UPN on September 8, 1996. Stan Lee and Avi Arad were executive producers. The Hulk was voiced by Lou Ferrigno, the same man who physically portrayed the Hulk in the iconic 1978 live-action television series. The supporting cast included Neil McDonough, Luke Perry, Mark Hamill, and Kathy Ireland. Big names, recognizable faces, a beloved Marvel property, and still, the show stumbled. Season 1 was dark and moody in tone. Bruce Banner was already the Hulk, already on the run from the military, battling villains like the leader. The animation style was heavily stylized and gritty, a visual approach that felt too intense for younger audiences and too limited in budget for older ones. UPN was unhappy with the first season's direction. The network felt it was too dark and too narrow in its appeal. So for Season 2, the formula was overhauled. She-Hulk was brought in as a regular co-star. The network explicitly stated they wanted to give female viewers a chance. The show was officially renamed The Incredible Hulk and She-Hulk. Grey Hulk also appeared in the second season as a major character. But the changes didn't save it. The series ended after just 21 episodes across 2 seasons, and it is frequently cited in animation discussions as one of the weakest superhero adaptations of the entire decade. What earns it the number 1 spot on this list isn't just that it failed, it's how it failed. This was a Marvel property with Stan Lee directly involved, with Lou Ferrigno returning to a role that had made him famous, backed by a network eager for it to succeed. And the result was still a show that couldn't hold its audience, couldn't settle on a tone, and ended without leaving any real legacy behind. Marvel would go on to produce far better animated work, but in 1996, the Hulk couldn't smash his way out of cancellation. So those were the 10 cartoon shows from 1996 that never got a real chance. Some of them were genuinely ahead of their time, like Waynehead, which tried to bring disability and inner-city life into animation when almost no one else was doing that. Some were casualties of budget pressures and network politics, like Bruno the Kid, which had the talent, had the writing, and simply couldn't afford to keep going. Some arrived at the wrong moment, like C Bear and Jamal, which might have landed differently a few years earlier or a few years later. And some, like Project G.e.E.K.E.R, probably deserved exactly the fate they got. But every single one of these shows represents a moment in animation history that is far too easy to forget and far too interesting to ignore. They were experiments. Some failed, some were unfairly buried. All of them were real, even if they only lasted 1 season to prove it. If you grew up watching any of these, drop a comment below and let us know. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe. because there are plenty more forgotten chapters of cartoon history still left to cover.